So now we're going to do dividing using scientific notation. So if you look, this is scientific notation divided by something written in scientific notation. Sometimes you might see it written a little bit differently. So sometimes you might see it written like that. It's the same thing. Top divided by bottom, top divided by bottom. Okay? So just like we did with multiplying, you could split it up and think about it as 3 divided by 6. And then we could have it as 10 squared divided by 10 to the 5th. So you can split those up, 3 over 6 and 10 squared divided by 10 to the 5th. I'll write it here just like we did in the multiplying video. So the only thing is that remember it would have to be 3 divided by 6 times, and then it would be 10 squared divided by 10 to the 5th. I personally like writing it like this so that I don't forget to have the division there. So now if you have 3 divided by 6, 3 divided by 6 is 0.5. 3 divided by 6 is 0.5. And then if we think about 10 squared over 10 to the 5th, I could write it as 10 over 10, or 10 times 10, and then 2, 3, 4, 5. And those would cancel. Remember, it would be 1 over 10 cubed. But in this case, for scientific notation, we never write 1 over 10 cubed. Write as a negative. So I would write it as 10 to the negative third. But remember your rules. Subtract exponents when dividing. I'll move my hand in just a second. So right here, subtract exponents when dividing. 2 minus 5 equals negative 3. If I have $2 and I owe you 5, and you'll notice I use money a lot because people can like to think about money because they don't want to lose money. But if you look at that, 2 minus 5, so if I have $2, I owed you $5 because anytime it's negative I always say owe. So 2 minus 5, or if I have $2 and I owe you 5, I still owe you 3 if I gave you 2. So I gave you 2, I owed you 5, I owe you 3 more. Now, we still have to use what we did in the multiplication. This number is not written in scientific notation yet because it has to be between 1 and 5. So I need to do that first. So 0.5, notice I'd have to move the decimal once, so it'd be 5 times 10. Now notice this one was a decimal, it was 0.5. So I moved it once, but it was a fraction, or it's 5/10, so you would have had to multiply it by 1/10. And this is why we went over converting scientific notation first. And then we still have the times 10 to the negative third. Okay, so then I have 10 to the negative first times 10 to the negative third. So the 5 would stay. And then if I have negative 1 plus negative 3, because see how there's multiplication between them? Make sure you add. So negative 1 plus negative 3 would be negative 4. If I owe you $1 and owe you $3, I owe you 4. So it would be 5 to the negative 4th. Okay, so just remember there was a lot going on in this one. First thing we needed to do was subtract. 2 minus 5 gave us negative 3. Or if you look at this over here, if you were simplifying like by expanding, you would have to remember the 10 cubed could not be written in a fraction. You'd have to write it as a negative. We got our answer, 0.5 times 10 to the negative third, so we had to change this into scientific notation because it wasn't all the way written in scientific notation. So it would be 5 times 10 to the negative first. This just pulled down. The 10 to the negative first and the 10 to the negative third, negative 1 plus negative 3 is negative 4. All right, last example. Okay, sorry that I keep dropping my pens, and I'm sure that that's loud. So now if you have 4.6 over 5.1, so 4.6 over 5.01 times, and we have 10 squared over 10 to the negative third. Simplify that. So 4.6 divided by 5.01, which is 0.91816, blah, 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 blah. Now, I want you to move down a little bit because I need to remind you of rounding. So if we're going to round 0.91816 to the hundredths, let's round to the hundredths. Then you need to look at its tens, hundredths. So the way I do it is I'm going to look at that second number, or the number that I'm rounding to, and I'm going to underline it. So I want to end up with 2 decimal places. I'm going to look at the next number. If the number is larger than 8, then it is closer to 92 rather than 91. So I'm going to round this number up to 92. Round up because it is larger than 5. Okay, so then right here I want to make it 0.92 times something. And then remember, since it's division, we're going to subtract. So I'm going to do 2 minus, well, it's minus a negative 3. 2 minus a negative 3 minus a negative. So if you think about a number line, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 0, negative 1. So if I'm at 2 and I'm going to subtract, well, subtract normally means to go that way, but I'm subtracting a negative 3. So instead of going backwards It's like saying the opposite of a negative. The opposite of a negative is positive. So instead of subtracting a negative, we're actually going to add 1, 2, 3. So 5. So it'd be 10 to the 5th. And let me talk to you about those 10 squareds and negative 3's. So if I have 10 squared over 10 to the negative third. Well, remember, if we have a negative exponent, we actually move it. So this one would actually be moved to the top. And then if I wrote all of those out, it would be 10 times 10, and then 10, 10, 10. So if you look, I actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on top, which is what we did when we said 2 minus negative 3, or opposite of a negative, is positive. So it'd be 0.92 times 10 to the 5th. But again, we have that problem again, where this number is not already in scientific notation. So it needs to be 9.2 times 10. Since that is hundredths, it's 92 cents. It's 92 hundredths. I'm moving it once, but it was a small number, so it'd be negative 1. And then I have times 10 to the 5th. So 9.2 times 10, and then add those numbers. Negative 1 plus 5, because notice now it's multiplication between these two. Negative 1 plus 5. If I owe you $1 and I gave you 5, I gave you 4 too many. And I'm just giving away a bunch of money apparently. So it would be 9.2 times 10 to the 4th. Okay, so again, just pay attention that when you're dividing, make sure you subtract. Even if it's a negative, subtract the negative, which gives you a positive 5. And then divide these two numbers. So if it's in the original problem, division, divide. If it was multiplication, then you would multiply like we did in the last video, or in the last part of the video.